set up here momentarily, live on Facebook, and we are going live on Instagram right now. Here we are. Season 12 underway. Thanks to you guys for all the support, tuning in. Gotten a handful of episodes out to you so far over the past few weeks. We did Steve Aoki and Ice Cube and Calvin Johnson and Richard Branson. We have Blake Griffin next week, the NBA star. Spent the day with him in Brooklyn. Super fun, and actually for the first time ever with a professional athlete, we just dropped in on a bunch of kids playing sports. So Blake and I drove over by the Brooklyn Bridge and just dropped in on some kids playing pickup basketball, which was a lot of fun. So that hits next week. We have race car driver Jimmy Johnson coming up. We have Ozzy Osbourne, the legend. We taped an episode with. So a lot of good stuff on tap. We're going to be taking your questions here momentarily. So any questions you guys have, send them our way. We got Bryant, our PR and digital extraordinaire, manning the channels for us. So send whatever questions you guys have on in. A couple things wanted to mention. Again, we have now, per your feedback, launched YouTube memberships. Facebook fan subscriptions has just launched as of today. Only place you can go for full episodes, access. We give you the ability to ask questions of the guests we're featuring there. So check it out. It's just kind of a additional source for more content beyond what we're already putting out and continue to do through our existing platforms. If you're watching on one of our digital platforms, you can also watch us on TV, grahambensinger.com to find out how. And lastly, and then we're going to get to your questions, race to 1 million subscribers. We're trying to get to on YouTube. Once we get there, we're going to invite one of you guys and a friend out to one of our upcoming tapings. So whatever you guys can do to assist would be great. Cover everything, Brian?
Yeah, man. You're rocking.
All right. Cool. Send your questions on in, whatever you guys got. What's first up, Brian?
So let's start with YouTube. We've actually had a couple Kobe Bryant questions come in already. First one from Keith Gordo. Can you tell us an untold Kobe Bryant story that you haven't shared before from your time with him?
Oh, man. Interestingly, that was a really long time ago now. I think we taped him in, I want to say 2012, Newport Beach. I'd been working on trying to book him for a taping, understandably, forever. I mean, it's Kobe Bryant. We were supposed to get him a couple of years prior to that. Then it didn't work out. Then a year prior to that, and it didn't work out. And all of a sudden, we found out, I think on like a month notice, that he'd be willing to give us some time. And, especially then, I think it's like season 3 of the show, he was about as big of a celebrity as we'd ever had access to. So really the thing I most remember about Kobe was just how nervous I was going into that taping. You almost feel like you're having an out-of-body experience because, I'm a early 20-year-old kid just kind of launching the show at the time, and it's Kobe you're sitting down with. So I just remember I could almost feel my heart pounding through my ears. I was so nervous, and he was nice as could be, fully engaged, looked me in the eyes, made you feel like you're the only one in the room, and couldn't have asked for a better experience with Kobe.
Right on, man. All right, so next one, Scott Williams wants to know, who have you been most starstruck to interview?
I mean, Kobe would be one. Richard Branson, who we just aired this past weekend on TV, would be another. I'd been trying to get him for like 5 years. And as you guys have probably heard me tell before, it was a chance meeting in North Africa that led to a week in the Bahamas with him. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple that come to mind. Somebody I never had the opportunity to interview, but was pursuing a lot in my earlier days was Michael Jackson. And I remember being backstage at the World Music Awards in London. And this is, oh gosh, like winter 2005 or winter 2006. And I mean, literally right next to him before he was going out on stage, he's like, putting makeup on. And I had the opportunity to meet him, but I remember chickening out. So that's one that comes to mind with Michael Jackson. And I see one on Instagram from AP. Have you ever tried getting Floyd Mayweather on the show? We actually, somebody we're actively working on. I interviewed him back in, oh gosh, this is, but before we started this show, when I was doing work for ESPN at the time. This is really before Floyd's career took off, so that probably would have been '07. Sat down with him at his gym in Vegas, which he still has, and we interviewed him then, but we've not featured him in one of the 12 seasons of the show.
All right, let's dip into Facebook for two. One, give me, I know you hit this at the top, but a lot of people are coming in now. Susie is asking, where can we see your full interviews?
Sure. Full interviews. YouTube channel memberships, Facebook fan subscriptions. We've just launched it based on your guys' feedback. Full episodes, more access, the place you can go to ask questions of our guests. So you can find that on YouTube, on Facebook, and that's where you can go.
All right, still with Facebook. Caleb Brian Hartwig wants to know, what's the biggest challenge setting people up to interview? Scheduling.
Well, I mean, I'd say the biggest challenge actually is less getting access to the person we're trying to interview and more the amount of time that we want with the person. So, if this was like 5 or 10 minutes, I mean, it'd be way easier to book than a few hours or parts of a few days. And so because we're asking that amount of time, often of, A-list type folks who don't really need the exposure we bring, it becomes a much longer process. And we'll spend, I mean, there have been people we featured that have taken 5 years to book because of it.
All right, a couple of rapid fire ones for you. Christian West wants to know, how do you build on-camera confidence?
How do I build? Well, I wish I knew. Maybe you can help me out with that. Yeah, I mean, I think I have a long way to go to get to where I want to be to continue developing as a host, interviewer, on-camera presence, etc. I will say though, as you do more of it, it's like anything, you just get more comfortable. So, we're 12 years into the show. I'm 35. I started when I was 14 with an internet radio show, and it's crazy to think the majority of my life I've now been doing these interviews. Again, still have a long way to go to get to where I want to get, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, kind of like anything in any walk of life.
All right. So this username.
And Brian, make sure you're monitoring Instagram too, if you aren't already.
All right. This username is No Name, wants to know, is Earth flat?
Yeah, Earth is flat.
Okay, thanks for that. All right, CJP, what are your plans for the show or for your...
You are FaceTiming me, Brian, so my Instagram is paused.
Shit.
This is an FYI.
Sorry. Yeah, that was just a butt thing. All right, CJP, hi Graham, what are your plans for the show or for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, so a couple things. First, it's really important to me that we continue producing content that's of improving quality, access to bigger names, better stories, more access. That's first and foremost. And I think if we do that, the content that we create will continue to break through. Will continue to break through the clutter more often, and that's really the biggest goal. Then beyond that, we do primarily sports interviews, but long term, I just have interest in featuring the biggest names and the best stories, regardless the field. So we're slowly taking steps in that direction, and then continuing to grow our audience size. We want to put our content wherever you guys are consuming it, whether that's TV, digital, streaming, etc. So we're actively, having conversations to continue to do that and grow our partners and platforms.
All right, we got a $2 donation that came with this question. So Waruna Pereira wants to know, who would you interview from the past, non-living?
Who would? Oh my gosh. I mean, first, name the president or the head of state, or the global figure, regardless of whether they had a positive or negative impact on the world. I mean, Hitler would be a fascinating interview. On the sports front, Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, so many. I mean, you could make an end of people.
All right, Joel Martinez is asking, on average, how many questions per interview do you come up with that you don't ask because you absolutely can't for whatever reason? How many questions don't hit it?
That's interesting. Not, I don't know how many questions I ask that I don't cover, but I would say, I actually don't have an index card near me, but I have these, you've probably seen in the index card, since this is a paper towel, index cards kind of about this size. And I'll have somewhere between 7 and 10 index cards filled with questions. As we talked about before, we put probably 100 hours of research into each interview preceding the sit down. And so I try and know everything I possibly can learn about the person prior to going into the taping. And I'd say the majority of what I want to talk about gets covered, but you can never really predict the flow of the conversation, and so you might cover different topics at different times, that sort of thing. I probably write a lot more questions than the average interviewer does, and that's probably for no other reason than I'm just less talented than the average person doing the interviews. But I think the biggest thing on my end is just trying to over prepare.
All right, a couple from Instagram. They're wondering if you've ever knocked on Michael Jordan's door.
I not literally knocked on his door, but I've been working on Michael for a while. I've emailed with him, once before. Something we obviously want. He's the greatest. And hopefully, at some point we can pull that off, fingers crossed. I've been around him on a number of occasions before. He's always been super kind to me, and fingers crossed we'll be able to make that happen at some point.
And another one from Instagram. What stood out the most?
And let me know who they are too, by the way, if they actually have a name.
Well, this one was like TMP Zilla. What stood out the most from your time with Tony Romo?
What stood out the most to me from my time with Tony Romo is how he did not want to be there at all, it seemed like. And it's so funny because, again, here's somebody who's like gone out of his way to be nice to me. We first interviewed him in, probably like 10 years ago when he was in his early days, playing for the Cowboys. And then I wanted to feature him again for an episode after he retired, after he became a CBS broadcaster and obviously had a ton of success in that. And, he's invited me out to like dinner before. And so, yeah, I was really excited to profile him again because it's rare that you go into, or at least for me, that I go into a taping having already had a pre-existing relationship with the person. And he just, is on the heels of him signing that record-setting broadcasting contract extension, which despite it being a couple days after that, he had no interest in talking about that whatsoever. And it was just like you could tell it was almost like a painful experience for him being there. And I mean, I've talked to him since. Again, good guy. Just doing media is not his favorite thing to do, despite his profession now.
Joey King wants to know, does your network show pay the celebrity to interview with you? And if so, is it the same for all celebrity or does it depend?
You said that was Jonah?
Joey King.
Joey. Okay. Hey, Joey. So never paid anybody ever. First, I'd be broke if we were doing that. Second, it's just not, I feel like I've always felt like it would be very difficult to have any degree of credibility to the piece if you're compensating the person for, journalistic work. Having said that, though, I'm also very conscious of the fact that if somebody's going to give us that amount of time, they need to get some benefit out of the appearance. So I always ask, and we go to great lengths to make sure if there's a project or a business relationship or something on the charity end that they want to promote, we'll go above and beyond to try and do that because I feel like it's, the right thing to do, and they deserve to get that if they're giving us that amount of time.
All right. So Eric wants to know, or technically Eric Hansen Burner wants to know, will you ever interview, he names off a couple chess masters. Short version is, would you ever interview a chess grandmaster?
I would, Eric. I mean, the one I most wanted, somebody asked, obviously, anybody living or deceased that I would like to interview. Bobby would have been amazing. I mean, I was trying to figure out a way to, get that. Obviously, my friend Jeremy Schaap has had some memorable encounters with the late Bobby Fischer, but he would have been somebody that would have been amazing to have the opportunity to sit down with.
All right. Dipping into Instagram. So this is tstang94. Best tip you learned to have success from a business aspect, and which businessman gave it to you?
And can you repeat that, Brian?
Yeah. Okay, so the user is tstang94, wants to know the best tip you learned to have success from a business aspect, and who gave it to you?
That's a really interesting question. And again, guys, send your questions in, whatever you got. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Taking them, but appreciate all the support. We're a month into season 12 or year 12 of the show. Also, before I get to that, if you guys have guest suggestions, we love them. There's one that we literally just booked last week. We're not going to reveal it yet, but we're traveling to Europe for it here in about a month and a half. And that is only because you guys sent it in. So we love them. Continue to send them in, either comment here or email us, graham@grahambensinger.com. I'd say the best business tip I've ever received was actually one from my dad when I was like going broke trying to build the show, because in addition to me hosting it, we've created the business behind the show, the company that handles the editing, producing, filming, ad sales, syndication of the show, all of that. And yeah, I mean, there were a few years, and we put together an episode that about kind of the decade of the show, decade of in-depth, the anniversary episode that we put on YouTube that gets into a little of this. But a few years into the show, I mean, I was pretty much on the other side of broke, and my dad, who's a financial advisor, really, sat down with me, ran through, cash flow, helping me make financial projections, how to budget, and where we could cut costs. And it was just, I didn't know the first thing about business when I first began putting this together. I still admittedly know very little, but you're forced, we have 12, by the end of the year, we'll probably have 15, full-time folks as part of our team. And you're just kind of forced out of necessity to learn it. And give my dad a ton of credit for like taking the time to, sit down with me and go through that, because it made a huge difference to me and kind of my thinking long term, having that experience. Because I left college after a year and a half, never took a business course in my life. And granted, my dad probably just didn't want to see his son be severely in debt for life, but it helped a ton. So that's the immediate one that comes to mind. And then, when you have the chance to talk to like billionaire entrepreneurs, like the Charles Schwabs and the Arthur Blanks and the Bernie Ecclestones, Richard Branson's, folks like that, you always walk away with some sort of lesson or piece of motivation from their experiences and success.
All right, we've got a few guest-focused ones on the docket. Jason Taylor wants to know, what did you admire most about Djokovic that you learned in his interview?
That was memorable taping for a number of reasons. One, we spent 2 days in Serbia with the guy who I think will go down as the best tennis player ever to live, Novak Djokovic, or at least best male tennis player ever to live. And then it was also our last big taping before COVID. We got back from there, I believe, the end of the first or beginning of second week of March. We'd flown from there to Dallas for Tony Romo, and then get back on a Monday. Wednesday, they postponed the NBA season, and all the kind of dominoes fell from there. So that was one, but two, seeing where he had to hide out as a kid in his grandparents' apartment complex in a bomb shelter, as Belgrade was a war-torn region. And, just the fact that here's this guy who's as good as it gets, but never really ever gotten the credit he deserves. And granted, that's starting to change some, but just the kind of mental acuity that's at least partly responsible for his success, I thought was, pretty interesting. And then he got into opening up about some of his, personal challenges as well with, his wife, which I thought was interesting because, most people can't identify with somebody serving a tennis ball 120 or 140 miles an hour, whatever it is. But everybody can identify with relationship challenges. And so to the extent we're able to humanize these larger than life figures, that's what we always go for. And so I always appreciate when somebody's willing to share those moments.
All right, I'm going to combine three together here because they're basically all guest suggestions. So Bethany Marie is suggesting that you interview Oscar Pistorius. Keith Gordo is asking you to interview Vanessa Bryant. And then Chase Pruitt is asking, would you ever interview the newer crowd of influencers like a Logan Paul? or Aiden Ross. So whatever you want to comment on from those three.
Yeah, I mean, the Paul brothers, either would be fascinating, active conversations going on there. Vanessa Bryant would be interesting, as would Oscar Pistorius. And, it's interesting. A lot of the folks that get recommended for tapings, we are working on or at one point have worked on. And, it's less often now that people just flat out say no, and more often they'll just say not right now. So sometimes, you have to wait a year or two before something happens, but all great suggestions and kind of spot on in terms of our interest level and desires.
Let's combine a couple more because I think they're in the same realm. So Salman Antar wants to know which interview hit you the most. I'm thinking, like from an emotional perspective. And then Noam Wolf is asking, what interview made you look at a guest in a completely different way? Can you combine those?
Sure. The interview that was most emotionally gripping was with Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott and his brother Tad, in the interview where they revealed for the first time and opened up about their brother's suicide a few months prior. And, that was just brutal because you realize pretty quickly that they had talked about it very little, including amongst themselves. And just the weight of what they were going through was, painfully visible. And, you just felt bad in the moment, wanted to comfort them to the, extent you could. But then what was so kind of gratifying about having had the opportunity to do that and put that episode out was we got a lot of messages from a lot of people that have gone through similar issues or challenges, and watching somebody of that stature or a family of that stature talk about and share those experiences was helpful to them. And so, it just, that's kind of the one of the things that's most satisfying about this work is when, you legitimately, you're able to get like feedback, first or second hand from people about the impact that watching the content has on them.
Here's a short one. Smitty wants to know.
And what was, I completely forgot about what the second question was.
Oh man.
Maybe you do too.
Well, I delete them after I ask them.
Okay, so just ask one at a time, then, so neither of us forget. Sorry for forgetting the question.
Maybe somebody can help us out in the chat. I'll be looking for that.
Okay.
All right. So,
and by the way, if you could also put in there where people can go if they're interested in joining YouTube memberships or Facebook fan subscriptions. Again, that's we've just recently launched both. It's where you can go for our catalog of full episodes, exclusive access, place you can go to ask questions of our guests on YouTube and Facebook.
I remember that question. It was basically who is somebody you sat down with who you formed a completely different outlook or perspective on after having done the sit-down interview?
Oh, great question. I actually don't know. I'm surprised so often by people. Okay. I would say this is less about how my opinion of them changed in the experience and more just how surprised I was by the unexpected feedback from the taping. We spent a day in Mexico in Guadalajara with Canelo Alvarez, world's best boxer. And I knew he was famous and I knew he was successful. Never would I have ever expected the interview to take off like it did. And I think it was because it was the only time he'd ever really done an extensive interview. But I mean, in the first, few weeks, I think we had 30 plus million views digitally on the content alone. And, actually ran into Canelo a couple months ago, and he was telling me, uh, you know, Mexico's richest man, billionaire entrepreneur Carlos Slim actually called him about the interview and had really nice things to say after that. So that's just one that comes to mind that I was really appreciative for him sitting down with us, and then pleasantly by how much it resonated.
So I've seen this question a few times. I want to make sure that it gets asked. And the question, one of the users who submitted it was Bill G, is asking, how do you build great rapport with the people that you interview?
I mean, wish I knew. I think that's debatable in terms of if I do or don't. But you know, I think the only thing that I really have going for me, and I've said this before, is you just put a lot of time into the preparation and doing the research. And if you prepare more than most of the other people that do the interviews with these folks, then you're immediately going to at least distinguish yourself some. And that's inherently going to create opportunities for better access in the moment than they're normally used to giving. And so, to the extent I develop a rapport, it's really because over time I've gotten a little more comfortable, and then just try and over prepare.
All right, Smitty's asking, when you interviewed John Daly, did he give you one of his suit jackets? And if so, which one?
He gave me two suit jackets, and I gave. I think he signed one or both of them. I didn't ask for either, but I gave them both to buddies. I think whichever ones he had me try on in the episode, I think two of those were ones he ended up giving to me. So, and the only time I have not agreed to do some sort of stunt that was proposed, because he wanted me to lay on the ground, stick a golf tee in my mouth, and drive a golf ball off my face. And that was the one I begrudgingly passed on.
Anonymous Dude 123 is asking, who would your 12-year-old self be most excited to interview?
I mean, my 12-year-old self would both be excited to interview Mark McGuire, who had at the time just come over to the Cardinals from the Oakland Athletics, and obviously went on a tear and broke Roger Maris's home run record. When he hit his 62nd and eventually 70th home run. So that would be my 12-year-old self's home run in terms of who I'd like to interview. And then I used to be a big fan of the Today Show when I was a kid. I'd get up every morning at like 5 or 6 a.m. and be sitting at the table for the Today Show to start at 7 with Katie Couric and Matt Lauer.
All right, this user goes by the letter K, and they're asking, was there ever an interview where you had to cut out a lot of material for certain reasons?
I mean, every interview we have to cut out a lot of material depending on the platform. So, we put our content in a lot of different places. So, you can watch the episodes on TV across the US, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox stations, on cable, Bally Sportsnets, NBC Sportsnets, etc. Internationally, ESPN, in Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Caribbean, South America, BT Sport in the UK and Ireland, TSN in Canada, video screens in taxi cabs, and then we have a podcast, which is the one place you can go for the long form, uninterrupted interview. But on TV, the full episode, which because of time constraints on TV, ends up being only a half hour in length, and we spend anywhere from a few hours to parts of a couple days with the person we're interviewing. So a lot gets cut for the television episode. Having said that, that's the one place you can go for kind of the best storytelling. We have lots of footage and voiceovers, and everything's nicely edited together. And then digitally, while all the content's available there, it's kind of broken up by topic and clip. So each platform we program a little differently, but there are some platforms where it gets cut a ton. And grandbensinger.com is where you can go for the TV airing schedule and to find out all the different places you can find the content.
All right, so Whiplash 2020 threw $5 behind this question, so make it good.
What would you say, Whiplash?
Whiplash 2020.
Hey, Whiplash.
Is asking, do you plan on interviewing Patrick Mahomes anytime soon?
Like to. Hopefully in the next year or two we can make that happen. Obviously, he's as bright of a young star as exists out there in the most popular sport in the U.S. So I think he'd be great for sure. And then maybe we can get Tom Brady at some point too. And Brian, maybe we do one or two more and then call it a wrap, because I know football is coming up.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. So here's one. Jason Taylor, how do you handle celebrities that get angry at private questions?
Rarely, if ever, happens anymore. When I was, go back 10 years, 10 seasons in the earlier days of doing this, it would happen more often. And I think that's less because of my interest in asking personal questions and just more because of my lack of experience in figuring out how to lead into the question and the tonality to use, etc. So I think most often you can cover a really sensitive subject matter if you handle it delicately, but how it's handled is something I put a ton of time and thought into, because you want the person you're featuring to have a really positive experience, and most often those folks are willing to cover and go to those places if they can trust that you're going to do it right. So are you saving the best one for last, Brian?
Just a little shout out to everyone throwing the guest suggestions in there. Thank you for those. We're going to come back and sift through them later for sure. We see Larry Merchant, Russell Simmons, Steven Tyler. Those are awesome. All right, let's wrap this up with this last one. Is there a plan on interviewing multiple people instead of one-on-one? Would it be fun to hear their stories of rivalry?
So yes, for sure. Admittedly, we haven't done that more because it's just something I'm less interested in. I'm personally passionate about spending a lot of time with one person and kind of learning about their life and path to success and highs and lows and lessons learned and that sort of thing. I wouldn't say it's something we'll never do. It's just something that historically I've had less interest in, and that's why we haven't done it for that reason. With that having been said, again, thank you guys all so much for making the time to watch. If you'd like us to continue to do these, just drop us a note. We are planning to do them once a month or so. Again, a couple things I wanted to mention. If you want to find out where else to watch the show, grandbensinger.com. YouTube memberships, just launched it. Check it out. Facebook fan subscriptions, basically same content, different platform. Check it out. Just launched. Only place you can go for the full episodes, exclusive access, behind the scenes, asking questions of our guests. And if there's anything that's not there that you want, send us a message, because we just launched it. It's new. We're trying to figure it out. If you have guest suggestions, you can email them to us, graham@grahambensinger.com. And thanks again for everything. The support means a lot. We're off to a decent start. Season 12, year 12 of the show. We've done Ice Cube and Steve Aoki and Calvin Johnson and Richard Branson. We have Blake Griffin, the NBA star, next week. Jimmy Johnson, the race car driver, and Ozzy Osbourne coming up. So lots of good folks in store. Season 12's off and running. And thanks again, and we will talk to you soon. So long.